power. Power. Because we talk about the word power. Everybody talks about power. Shouldn't have power. You're in a power complex. You got a power trip. And then we leave it like that. What I want to do is separate this word power into kinds of power. And as long as we keep condemning power or reaching for power or using the word just as a blunk, we don't know what we're talking about most of the time. The word most simply means to be able. Potere, to be able. Able to act, to do, to be. And more narrowly, the word means potency. The word's roots mean inherently domination. That's what the word really means. You see, the root of the word potere, P-O-T-E-R-E, is behind our word power, and behind that word potere is P-O-T-I, which was the word for husband, lord or master. The Greek word for husband was posis, P-O-S-I-S. And the lord of the house was called the despotes, or despot.
Can everybody hear that now?
Yeah.
The lord of the house was the despot. Now you can see why the whole feminist movement tries to get rid of the word of power, and when they build their hierarchy, they don't have hierarchy. They've gone against hierarchy. So everything is, much of the feminist movement, the attempt is to get rid of hierarchy and to do everything as co-equals, no despotism, no husband, no power, no structure of that kind. The word Lord is dominus, dominate. And the slaves called their master in the Greek household the despotes, the lord of the household, or in the Latin world they called him a dominus. Now you see, a trip's been done so that the word power is a bad word. There shouldn't be that whole structure. When we get rid of all of that, we get rid of something. So we have to keep get this word back without all the prejudices that are associated with it now. So the desire for power, the power drive or so on as it's called, really would mean then a desire for agency or effectiveness or potency, or to be lord in the house or of the house in some manner or by some means. Now, this can turn into the master-slave situation where everybody else is a slave then, but it doesn't have to mean that. The word we use now for that is control. We don't talk so much about power, but you want to be in control. Or I'm trying to control, or she's trying to control me, or so on. Who's in control here? Now that's another funny word, control, because control means contra rotulus, against the roll. It's like trying to stop the wheel. The flow of inertia. So that power or control is really to bring things from just rolling along or flowing or inertia, just going on, and control is to bring it into some kind of direction, purpose.
That sounds like it's more with the wheel, though, if it's trying to bring it into a direction rather.
I was told to pay no attention to interruptions. To keep control. So, you can differentiate these things in your own notes. I'm just giving you notes, right? And what we do with the notes, we can come up with then at the end in discussion and so on. I just want to get through the stuff. Now, there are different kinds of images. We've lost this. There are different kinds of images for control or for power. And I want to use some images for power now that we left the words behind for a minute. And the first one I want to use is from the I Ching, the first hexagram, which is called rising. Rising. And the first image in the I Ching is the movement of heaven is full of power. And the image is of a flying dragon, one of the images. The superior man, it says, that's the Chun Tzu, the superior man makes himself strong and untiring. Now we're getting an image now of power which you may experience when you're in a manic state or sub-hypomanic state. Untiring, you don't need any sleep, you don't stop for meals, you just go. A flying dragon. Makes himself strong and untiring. You know that business of being tired, oh, I'm tired, that tired, weak, that's that Blake state of withdrawal, isolation. The flame that shoots from the eye to the thing is untiring. Self-reflection is tiring. You feel tired, or when you're tired you begin to do that. Instead of going to sleep, you think about it. Now this rising is an energetic state. Even in psychiatry it's an energetic state. The manic condition is being full of energy, all systems going. It's not a willed condition. It's not control. It's not a tight fist so much as it's just moving, rising. And so it's also the feeling of inflation. Now, close to this, or another one, when it gets closer to the will, is in power, is ambition. Again, something we put down. He's very ambitious. Usually we mean with ambition aspiration beyond competency. You aspire for something beyond your competence. And that's the put down in ambition. John Adams, president number 2, was filled with ambition, and he called it a passion for distinction. It's a very different notion, a passion for distinction. An ambition to be recognized, to be distinct from everything, from everyone else around. A passion for distinction. You see, when we talk about passion, passion for what? Passion in connection with what purpose? Now, Adams had the idea of passion for distinction. That's a nice, beautiful idea. Now, suppose we were to think about ambition further, your own ambition, or someone you know who's ambitious and you've used the term. Maybe you don't even use the term anymore because ambition has been put down. Shouldn't be ambitious. The word ambition means ambit, the circuit, the circumference, the compass. So to be ambitious means to fill out your compass, your circumference, to fill out the walking range you have. You can have all kinds of ambition. The Greek idea to go beyond your ambit, to go beyond your circle, to go beyond your limits or boundaries was hubris or pride, and that always led to a fall. So ambition, if you don't fill your ambition, you're like Cassius, a lean and hungry man, wants to go further. If you go beyond it, you get smacked by the Greek gods for going too far. So you learn what is your circuit.
But the emphasis is filling out the circuit.
The emphasis is filling out the circuit. And I think that the Jungian notion of wholeness would be better described in terms of ambition, because ambition is put down, but you're supposed to become whole. Well, how do you fill out the circuit without ambition? To use certain talents, you have to be ambitious. And that is part of not leaving the Father's house, but taking over the Father's house. a place in the sun, self-assertion, effectiveness. That's again the idea of power as agency, being able to. You realize that most of the memories that psychotherapy encourages are the memories of hurt. I couldn't. I failed. I didn't. I wasn't able. Suppose psychotherapy were to emphasize other things in your memory of childhood. The time you did catch the ball. And you see, we've developed a cult of confession of failure. And the traumas that we remember are perhaps less traumatic than the adverb of how we remember. In other words, the adjective of the trauma, this hurt, or this was a trauma. We remember traumatically. We use our memories to hurt ourselves. Psychotherapy makes money on this. That's its business. If we read Ivan Illich, all the professions have to, we're all in an industrial world, and we all have to find new raw materials in order to keep the industry going. So psychotherapy in the last 20 years has found more and more new raw materials. Instead of finding bauxite mines in Guinea or iron mines in Brazil, we find old age, geriatric psychiatry, we find family therapy, we find families, we have to go inside people's houses, new raw material there, we find little children, we find all kinds of afflicted areas which are new mines for the helping professions to keep the business going. There are other ways of remembering that would be empowering rather than disempowering. Another notion of power, to differentiate it, is leadership. The candidates are always talking about what we need in this country is leadership. Now, I think leadership is congenital. I think there's certain kittens in the litter, and I want where's Will? There are kittens in the litter that are more curious or adventurous, and the others follow it, or that they push their way to the teat better than the others, that there's they are, in a sense, the leaders of the litter. There's certain horses that won't let other horses pass it. The moment another horse begins to come on, it goes faster. It has to stay in the lead, as there are others who don't want to take the lead. So I think that there's a congenital aspect in leadership. And I think that this leadership is not based on other aspects of power. It somehow is an instinct to take command for its own sake. Just, that's given. That's what you do. It's not ambition to be a leader. It would be what the military call a natural leader. And maybe the military, when we discuss, can say something about what they mean with that one. You see, if you confuse your natural gift and regard that as, you put it down because that looks like you're showing off, or you got a power problem, or you want to be in control, you see what happens to your leadership, to these qualities. I'm looking for notes, there it is, on authority, because we need to talk about that. I'm going through this quickly on purpose so that you can take the notes and then we can discuss it in conversation. To have authority. They talk about Averell Harriman, who died a couple of years ago, as having been in on all kinds of meetings with Roosevelt all the way back before Roosevelt when he was governor of New York. He knew all the Russian leaders. He had been everywhere. And through through his time with all this work that he did, all the places he was, he had authority. George Bush is claiming that kind of reason for being in power is that he has authority, having been head of the CIA and having been vice president and having been this and this and this. Authority as having been there, having a power based on knowledge, memory, judgment, sagacity, track record. And the question is authority given by society? Does society give you authority? Do you accumulate authority? I mean, you can be in public places for 50 years and still be a jerk, too. I mean, you know old professors who have knowledge, memory, a track record, they have a long thing, and they don't have authority. So there's something to do with the relation between the individual and the community that both gives authority or recognizes authority. The word authority is a curious one because it has in it A-U-T-O, which means self. It's as if the person is motivated by himself. So authority is also tied with authorship or authentic, true to itself. King Lear says at one point, or King Lear has no power after he's been stripped of his power as he goes through the first parts of the play, but Kent says to him, I see authority. So you can have authority without power, or authority can be a kind of power. You can hold no office, like Bernard Baruch, if you remember him. The people in the front row will thank you. Used to sit and consult on a bench in Washington with so on. A lot of people who have authority but no power, no office, but have power. And it's not due to influence, which is another kind of power we'll come to. And I think that the desire for authority, to feel authoritative, is a very strong desire. And I think it dominates the academic world and the professional world. And in order to have authority, one specializes in a narrower and narrower field where you become recognized on the use of the comma in Milton. And no one knows as much about that as you do. And you gain your authority from, the desire for authority is enormous. But it's gained at the expense of anything else. Authority also creates envy, and it is demeaned by others and looked at as crookedness or peddling influence, Machiavellian, Richard III. See, it's looked at as something, one doesn't want to recognize it. It's like looking for a good senex, a good father, the old wise man. So a great deal of authority is gained by a social recognition. People recognize. We have a very difficult time finding authority figures in our culture. As you said, Robert, I mean, who can they look at? Older men on the TV, who do they look at? Or anyone with authority, not just necessarily older men. Together with leadership is exhibitionism. Again, something that's become pathologized in the culture. We even have people who are called exhibitionists. Now, I couldn't stand up here and do this if I weren't an exhibitionist, right, Robert? Now the thing is, does one look down or not, you know? And exhibitionism is, again, I think, congenital. I think it's part of congenital. It's part of the animal life to display itself. Of course, moles don't display themselves, you can say, but we don't know what goes on down below. The desire to show one's coat, to strut one's stuff, do one's thing, put it out there, be top dog. There is, if without that exhibitionism, without being able to let it show, leadership, authority, a lot of things don't. You see, we have a lovely idea that power should be disguised and withheld, and one should be modest and quiet. Those are the dominant ideas. If you're a good boy, you don't show off. And if you then tie exhibitionism with taking your cock out in public and waving it and having a hard-on because you're in public, because you're in front of others, that's all bad boy. In fact, that's pathology. Reputation. In the Renaissance, it was called fama, F-A-M-A, fame. And when you read the Renaissance, both the Italians and the British tragedies, fame was the dominant motif of why the kings and the heroes and the people did what they did.
Also true of ancient Norwegian and Viking.
Reputation. Now, in the idea of reputation was the family genius or genius, which was a light around the head, and it was a protective spirit. And the family bed where you were procreated was called the genius, the bed of the family genius. The genialis, I think, lector or lecta, I forget the word exactly. So you were born carrying the seed of the genius or the specific gifts of the family. So if anything you did, when you did something that damaged your reputation, you damaged the family spirit. And if you enhanced your reputation, you raised the ancestors, you raised every part of the clan a level. So when the basketball star on TV says, "Hi, Mom," he is doing not just the mother complex, he is paying homage to that whole tradition of the family spirit. It'd be nicer if he said, "Hi, Dad," but in our culture, but still, there's something else going on in that isn't just, "Hi, Mom, I'm a good boy." It isn't just that. He's acknowledging the ancestral role in the genius, in his genius. And the rise from poverty to success, even if it's all been commercialized and crapified in the culture, means the same thing, because the genius, the star, was luminous, was light. It's like moving up Blake's ladder. And poverty was considered obscurity. You see, we say he rose from nothing. He rose from obscurity. Well, the psyche of the family was then in obscurity, that is, oppressed, depressed, lost in what did you call it? The slumberous mass. Yeah. And through the drive towards fame, one rises out of the slumberous mass. See, what I want to do is give recognition to these impulses that you have to be famous, to achieve something, to show off. We can talk about passion, but passion's located in these kinds of impulses. Which are all put down as being either rude or well, you know how you put them down. The reputation was your way of being immortal. The guy who won the race in the Olympics, and the Olympics began with foot races, naked foot races. And the man who won the race was there by being faster than anyone else, was thereby immediately translated to the hero position and achieved immortality. he was of another kind of being afterwards. So being crowned with the laurels, he was in another place. He had become, in a sense, immortal. Now, part of the power stuff is addressed by Adlerian psychology, Alfred Adler. And his view of it, and the Adlerian view of it, is that we're always trying to overcome our inferiorities. So it's a masculine protest, as he calls it, to overcome inferiority. So that power gets reduced to being simply a power drive to overcome something, to cover up a weakness. Castration, a feeling of lack, a feeling of weak self-esteem, overcoming a handicap, being driven by guilt. You see, it's given all the negative values. So when you do that to yourself, you cut down. If you begin to think, well, I'm only after this or somebody, you destroy those places that have a very deep push to them by calling it only overcoming a handicap or compensation for your innate inferiority and weakness. See, I don't need to talk about the inferiority and weakness. We've been given that since Freud. We've been given that for 80 years, particularly the last 20 years. We're all abused, we're all victims, we all had terrible mothers and absent fathers, we all had miserable childhoods, we've spent thousands of dollars remembering it. Just think what else you could have done with those thousands. Think of the clothes you could have bought. The show-off, the strutting, the dance lessons you could have had. Just think, you could have learned the tango, man. Now, there's a couple more that I've been adding to, because I've been talking about this with myself and some friends in the last year or so. Another one is appetite. There's something we haven't thought about enough, that our appetites present us with our passion, and they have a power in them. Zeus, the great daddy god of the Olympians, Zeus has an enormous appetite for life, for imagination. He transforms himself into a swan, into a shower of gold, into a bull, into a horse, into a swan, I said that, so on. And this appetition, this desire, D.H. Lawrence says desire is holy. Your appetite tells you something about your passion, and is a tremendous power in the appetite for life. And of course the church has always been against what they call appetition, and the philosophers have been against appetition. So what you learn, and I think Locke is only one of the last examples of the philosophies of reflection, is to cut out the appetite. See, when you're close to perception, close to the rose, you want the rose. It wets your mouth. You have appetite for the world. When you start reflecting, you lose the appetite. There are some strange parts of power that are important, but one of them is fearsomeness, being a fearsome person. And you could have no desire for any high position, you may have no ambition, but you want to be, or merely are satisfied by being an object of fear. Anywhere from being a swagger to a muscle hulk, or a prison warden, just to be an object of fear. And you can be, your power can be satisfied with that. And it plays a role in a lot of our lives. General Patton's life, the Tsar's life, Joe McCarthy. I think the shaman also is an object of fear and has some of his power from his fearsomeness. I think going mad in a manic condition is also is a way of becoming empowered, because you become an object of fear. And that's one of the God in the Old Testament, Yahweh's most important virtues, is that he's an object of fear. He's a fearsome, and the gods are objects of fear, or they often are. Something forgotten in the books that are, the goddess in every woman. The goddesses are objects of fear. They are fearsome. Now, I left out one that we're going to come back to because it's what I call office. There's a big difference between office, authority. You have authority, or you have power. Let's say you have power because you have office. You're in charge of the Minnesota Men's Group. So Todd and Tim and the committee have power because they have office. The transition, the power that's given by office, you'll see in January when one president goes out and another president comes in. Or you see, you may remember when, was it Ford who went out and Carter came in, or something like that. From 1 minute to the next, after the oath of office, the man who's out of office has no power, walks away, gets into a helicopter and disappears. The moment before that, he had all the power of the office. So being elected to an office, being appointed to an office, having an office, and you feel that. You feel this shit behind the desk has all this power just because he has that office. And the Europeans know how to make a great deal of that with their little hats. The Austrian train official, the French post office lady who shuts the window on you when you just get there and decides to count the stamps and put a pin through them or whatever. They know how to use office. And that's a distinct form of power. Being chairman. Influence is another one. Knowing the right people, being able to wield influence. You may have no authority. Nobody respects your judgment or anything. You may have no office, but you may have enormous power through influence. Now, I think there are subtler forms of this that I haven't expanded on, but I want to mention. One of them is called charisma, and I don't know what it is. But it is the power of being in touch, I think, with a mystery or in touch with an archetype in some way, so that you have it has an impersonal hold on you and you have an impersonal hold. It's like being lucky. It's like being in touch with the gods in some way. So people want to be around somebody who's lucky. I go to the track with this guy because he knows how to pick 'em. And he may not know how to pick 'em, but he has the charisma of being in touch with the horses. There's something magical about it. Something that it's attractive to women when it's a puer kind of charisma. Then there's the power of maintaining or supporting, which Susan Griffin talks about. So this is, let's say this comes more out of the feminist movement. Power of maintaining, supporting, sustaining keeping the thing going. After the flood, after the hurricane, the women are out there sweeping, putting the mud away, starting the thing going again. The men are ready to move off to another town. That distinction is crude, but there is something about maintaining, supporting, and empowering the world around you, empowering the children, empowering the community by the transmission of power to others, empowerment. Now, I think I'd like to stop and pick up from your questions. I like to, feedback, go back and forth. Today I didn't do that because I wanted to get through the main list. And then, now that the list is through, we can start to talk. Yeah?
Is anger a form of power?
Well, there used to be a kind of heilige thorn in the Germanic world, a holy rage that was authentic to the father. He was allowed it, and it was a demonstration of his power. Zeus has that holy rage, and not quite, but the thunderbolt part, and Yahweh has holy rage. It's a demonstration, certainly, of power, but it's connected with principles and ideals. It's not just a fit of pique. It's not just a bad temper. It's an anger over great things, social injustice, hubris.
I was wondering if it wasn't a taking back of power when a situation is, say, you've got that hand, there's some things are not in order, and it takes extra energy to re-establish that order.
Yeah, it could be. And it comes up by itself, And it is true that one of the things that women are so afraid of is a man's anger. And then we are very afraid of our anger.
And of theirs.
And of theirs. Yes. Yeah. Yes.
How about obstinacy?
Yes, that's one of the subtler things. Obstinacy, stubbornness, yes. He shall not suffer his foot to be moved. He who keepeth Israel shall not suffer his foot to be moved. Unbudging. Yeah.
Another note on that anger with women. I had one woman just totally shut herself off to me for like a period of 2 weeks or something. I don't know couldn't figure out what the hell happened to her. She just went dead. I questioned her and I said, I want you to ask yourself a question. What am I afraid of? And then ask yourself this: why do I want to fuck up my relationship with Tim? She said, first of all, she avoided the issue. Secondly,
Get to it.
2 days later, she came back, right? I am afraid. She says, you have the potential for violence. Where the fuck is that coming from? I'm not a violent man. It turned out that she's bisexual, right? And somehow she's turned off to men who can't be controlled.
Okay. Yeah.
I know we could talk about this for a long time, but under your theory of emphasize the positive and not the trauma of our lives, how do you answer Sanford's question that what you're really doing is propping up the ego in a regressive state so that we really live a life inferior to the life we led before we found out what the trauma was and what the problem was? It seems to me you're proposing avoiding the issues.
No, I have no trouble remembering. Just be aware of the trip that is put on you by the kind of remembering that therapy encourages, which is the remembrance of childhood as a horror, instead of childhood, or also childhood as a place of wonder, of intense sensual experiences, of incredible things, which you don't report and don't search for. Birth trauma from then on. And we cut ourselves off from that Neoplatonic child, which is the source of all kinds of other things. It isn't that you shouldn't, that you should repress whatever your parents did or didn't do, or uncles and so on did or didn't do. That isn't the point. It's just that hang-up that's the key to your life.
But the argument is that spending time on those things and healing those things, some of which we're doing here, will cause you to see the other things at a later time. Is that not right?
Well, I'm not sure that, you see, how do you know how much time to spend on it? How do you know that it isn't excessive already?
Why is it so much more powerful? The horrible side. That's what we've been talking
Yeah, why is the horrible side so much more powerful? I don't know if it is. I think the great repressed today is beauty. I don't think the family is the repressed. I don't think sexuality is repressed. I don't think memories of that sort are repressed at all. I think beauty is repressed.
In other words, you think it's just good marketing by psychotherapists?
No, I wouldn't call it good marketing, but I would, something like that, yeah. Yeah. We have fallen into a realm of self-reflection. It's the culmination of a whole historical catastrophe of being concerned with subjectivity.
It's certainly more difficult to talk about the good things about your past, the good things that happened to you, than the bad. It's much easier to say all the bad shit.
That's the norm.
Yeah, that's the norm.
But I want to get on with this. It's not just the good things. It's being touched by beauty. How hard it is to remember that.
Just to mention that Noam Chomsky is saying a great deal that when we see ourselves as victims, and then we open ourselves to a feeling that we're powerless to influence political decisions, which means that those running the culture can do as they wish then. So psychotherapy in this way fits in perfectly with the control of the whole culture by very...
Yeah, we disempower ourselves, no question. That's one part.
But the 3-year-old doesn't talk to us about beauty. It talks to us about the things that
We haven't let... You'd be surprised what else the 3-year-old can say. I mean, some of you have had that, I'm sure. If you give the 3-year-old a chance for a while, it'll have a lot of other things to say. Don't write the script for him.
Tiny little things.
3-year-old would have a lot to feel about those seashells.
Why is that scary as hell when you feel the beauty of the 3-year-old?
Right, that's the real question, because it breaks you out of this realm that we are in, this self-isolated thing. It is scary as hell to let beauty touch.
It's interesting when you look at the environments of our cities. What we've created for ourselves.
We do what?
I think that's interesting when you look at the environments of our cities and what we've created for ourselves.
No. And there's just so many examples of that. But I mean, what really does move you occasionally? What really does move you? And when something very important happens to you, you say, Jesus, it was so beautiful.
Piero Ferrucci says that the purest form of psychological health is experienced when we experience beauty.
Mm-hmm. And to go on with Chomsky's thing, by going on with the memories of the traumatic memories of childhood, you stay there in those memories. Now I'm not sure that healing, you have to remember, because you have to lift the door of repression, yes. But I'm not sure that equation is true, that by going on with those memories, you are thereby healed. I'm not sure of that.
But you get in touch with those feelings that you repressed for a long time.
Yes, that's important. As I say, lifting repression is important. Remembering is important. But one has to...
Helps you remember
close to the beauty.
Yes. That's the point, though. That's what seems to me even more repressed right now.
I mean, going back to the pain.
The beauty in the pain.
The beauty, well, not necessarily just the beauty in the pain, but the beauty in your childhood.
It would be the perception that's repressed, not the reflection.
The perception is repressed, yes. Yes.
But it seems to me then you'd better find that point when you're going past where you've gotten what you can get from it, or else you're feeding your life to the machine that keeps us feeling weak and victimized.
Yes, that's right. That's the problem.
You've got to recognize that point, be aware of it somehow.
Well, now, last night a couple people said at a certain moment their parents were dead to them. I mean, that was over. All that, it's no use then. That's over. That's over. Whatever that was. It's there, you know, as part of the case history, but it's not. That's not what moves the soul any longer. So in alchemy, they would talk about the nigredo, and you're in the nigredo, and it has to get blacker and blacker and blacker because that's the language they use, and eventually it turns, and it shouldn't turn too soon. You know, but. A program that keeps you in that is a disaster under the guise of healing. Somebody, yeah, please.
James, is there any correlation perhaps between repressed beauty and our society's infatuation with beautiful women, or is that
I
a
think
possible
so.
correlation?
I think society always liked beautiful women. I mean,
The young, healthy-looking body.
Briggs had it.
Superficial. This desire. Collective beauty.
I think it's connected with consumerism. That because there isn't beauty, the experience of beauty, one is hungry constantly for it.
Can I go back a second to the person who won the race was considered then to be a hero or hero, then immortal. And it's so strange that when they win the Olympics now, they will do commercials.
Right.
How strange.
Yeah, I thought of that.
Yeah.
So that's declaring their mortality. Is that what they're doing?
Well, in a way, but you see, by doing a commercial, they are at the top. They're totally world recognized, and they are receiving, as they call it, astronomical salaries.
Pay a lot of money to be served.
So, in a way, it is our form of being a star or a hero. See, translated into a star was actually what happened. A star was named after you. Yeah.
Can you say anything about what the causes may have been for the pejorative connotation that's arisen for all of these these power, authority, leadership, ambition? What, apparently at one time these were valued attributes, and what sequence led to these?
Well, a friend of mine says, look, we're living in a time of decline. Everything's off. Every single thing is off. Childhood is off. Beauty is off. Power is off. I mean, the whole business is off. This is the end of an age. We're all in Ulro. So the job is, to keep doing something that returns things. What was the song goes? Return, doesn't it? And to try to turn all these phenomena that are off, and not just leave them in that condition. Now the Neoplatonists called that epistrophe, or leading a thing back to its origins, leading it back to its archetypal value. So what I want to do with power is re-empower power from the bad case that it's been given.
Well, in some way what you're saying is like, the thing is, this is where we are.
Yes.
And let's go.
That's right. This is where we are.
Let's go.
Yeah. And find those places where you are putting your own so-called power drive down. with false humility, with niceness, with adaptation. Don't stand out. Don't go for it. Now, of course, the TV ads are always shouting to you to go for it, and they usually mean it's a Pepsi or something.
So go for it within certain parameters.
Yeah.
Follow the rules.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just thinking about when you're saying that things are in decline, and I'm thinking about the metaphor of sports and the lack of the dignity disappearing. And for example, I play a lot of soccer, and there's something elevating. I mean, it feels like shit when you get beat by a different team. Like the other day, Kurt beat me and scored, and I lay on the ground and I pounded on the ground because he beat me and it pissed me off. But that's different. That's different. There's all sorts of guys out there that do all sorts of, I mean, this is just intramural sports, and they're pulling on your jersey and they're kicking on you, and there's all this dirty shit going on, and there's a lot of people with around power, there's no dignity anymore. There's no standing up straight and going, I can lose, but I put it straight on. And then the flip side, there's also a lot of shame around the whole thing too.
It's avoiding shit.
Yeah, there's no like heroic head on going into the game. You know, so there's always turning away that.
Well, because you see, you have to realize that we live in a monotheistic religion called the economy. And the bottom line. Bottom line is a God term. And that decides everything. So when you lose, you're lower down on the ranking list. You have less commercial value. If you're on a winning team, you may be bought by the next level, get a better contract. I mean, the winning is completely commercialized.
Boils down to one thing, and all the other values. See, that what I'm seeing is that maybe in the past, not even so long ago, there were other values that kind of came along.
That's right. Yeah, we have one, and so when you begin to revalue things, you find yourself, as many people here probably do or have done, you find yourself having trouble with the economy. Always, you become a heretic. If the religion is our economy, you become a heretic when you begin to struggle with the economy. And the people who are in the arts and the people who are, have certain ideals and values and so on are struggling always with the economy. And you suffer tremendously. Because the economy determines the values.
We need a time check.
Time? Where do we go?
5 minutes.
5 minutes. Okay. Yes.
I've been working with empowering men and working as a consultant with CEOs, and I've attempted to put together a thing I called the King's Training based on the King archetype. I spent a lot of time calling CEOs. One of the questions I asked them is, do you think of yourself as a king?
What's the CEO?
The Chief Executive Officer. And just like that, it was 8 out of 10 would deny it immediately. No. They would deny the power. So I'd like you to talk about a little bit is the king archetype and how it relates to this and how we might use that to empower them.
Well, the king archetype was connected. The king was a divine king, and his authority on earth was based on his connection to a god. And if that dimension is gone, then to be a king sounds, you're self-inflated, you can't be a king. Now, if you can be a king, if the God is the profit principle and the economy, I mean, that would make, they would call themselves a chief executive officer, but not a king.
You see that he's warning you in a way that if you try to use the king archetype to influence man,
it's gonna,
you don't have the connection with it.
Right.
And what then?
Right. It's going to bring. It becomes demonic in a sense, despotic in our sense, or tyrannical.
Look at the term chief.
Yeah. Michael's going to do the next hour on the king, so that will come up again.
I'm in oral on sexual appetite. I'm not supposed to, I want to find out about this. Tell me about specifically sexual appetite. You said something that seems to be...
Tomorrow, that is my topic. Still 2 minutes. So you've already spoken. Yes.
Is there an example of a culture where there hasn't been a repression of beauty experiences from your childhood? Is there any culture that we know of that?
Well, they say that about Bali. Yes. They say that about the Benin culture of West Africa. They say that about...
What is that like then? How is that different?
No, I don't want to do it that way, because then we're way outside of ourselves and you're setting up some model somewhere. What do you do about your sense of beauty? Where do you avoid it? Where would you like to have something? Where would you like to buy a different shirt or a bunch of flowers? Or where do you do something that's practical, like a no-iron shirt instead of the one that feels good on your skin? Where do you buy low-maintenance products that are ugly? And so on and so on and so forth. I mean, it's endless. It's endless. No, don't worry about Bali. Don't worry about Bali. Worry about what you do to repress in little ways your delight in beauty and how little time is given to it. Or just looking, perceiving, and thereby cutting yourself off from the world. Or admitting that you cry over that it really touches you, music, or whatever.
Why is so much modern art negation of beauty? Why is it that we have to make...
For the same reason as everything else, that we are in a time where all these things are fucked up.
So they simply reflect that fucked up...
Yes. Minimalism, conceptualism, so on and so on. Yeah. But it isn't all that way. It isn't all that
Very
way.
interesting. Aubrey, Yeats said one time to Aubrey Beardsley, Audrey, why do you make all your paintings so ugly and horrifying and so on? And he said, well, Yeats, beauty is difficult.
So we hit it. Yeah, okay.
Please remember.